When I sat down and told my grandmother that I wanted to be a pro life activist like her and grandpa, she told me to take this book and read it. And then in the fall, when I turned 13 years old, I went out and engaged in my first ever debate on the issue of abortion. Without this book, I would have never been able to properly share the pro life message and take that big step of debating an adult when I was just 13 years old. So I thought, what better way to start off this pro life activist how to series than the only way I know how, starting at the very beginning with what is the pro life message and 10 tips on sharing that message. Real quickly, I just want to ask you guys to like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. It really just helps push this show out. And you guys received the first episode so well, and I'm so grateful. And I want to continue to do this for you guys as well as get it out to more people. So if you could just quickly do those things for me, I would greatly appreciate it. Let's get into this video. This book here is the Sharing the Pro-Life Message Handbook, and it is the handbook that I will be referencing throughout this entire video and honestly many videos to come. It is the best tool that I have in my pro-life toolbox, and if you'd like to get a copy, the link is below. In order to share the pro-life message in any capacity, whether that's outward activism, protesting, praying outside the abortion clinic, or in a one-on-one conversation, we need to first know what that pro-life message is. Now, this is one of my most popular speeches I actually give when I go and talk somewhere. It's the 10 tips on sharing the pro-life message. And when this part normally comes up, I encourage students to raise their hand and to shout out loud their answers. Unfortunately, we can't do that in a video, but I want you to real quickly just pause it and write down in the comment section or on a piece of paper what you believe the pro-life message is. So I'll give you a quick second to do that. Okay, I'm so glad you wrote that down. Now, I promise you that is the only bit of homework you're ever gonna get from me in a video like this. Now, the really fun part about this when I say it out loud to a group of students is that everyone shares their varying opinions on what the pro-life message is. But the neat thing is when it all comes together, when I tell them this simple way to phrase it: every human being has value and dignity and should be treated as such. That message right there covers all of our bases as pro-life activists. So many people come to pro-lifers and say, well, what about so many people will come to pro-lifers and say, what about the people who are already born? What about the poor? What about the hungry? What about the kids in foster care? And the thing is, we can tell them that the pro-life message is that we value and dignify all human life. Now, a big call right now is ending abortion. It's something we have to address right now. But that doesn't mean that we don't care and we're not doing stuff for all those other people suffering. Now that you know the pro-life message, let's get into 10 tips on sharing that message. These 10 tips will help you share the pro-life message with compassion and conviction. Sharing the pro-life message can come up in any and everyday circumstances. Your aunt at the dinner table on Thanksgiving mentions that she donated to Planned Parenthood. Or your coworker confides in you that she's in an unexpected pregnancy. Your professor might speak out in class about being pro-choice. Or if you're like me, you had a pro-life pin on your backpack at Six Flags and somebody in the line asked you about your pin. And all of a sudden, you are sharing the pro-life message in line at Six Flags. If you have found yourself in any one of those circumstances, you might have, like me, frozen up on the spot, not sure where to go and what to say. But don't worry, this little handbook with all of the tips and tricks are going to help you share the pro-life message with compassion and conviction. Tip number 1 is to listen and pay attention. I believe that this is tip number 1 for a reason. If we cannot listen to the opposing side when it comes to the issue of abortion, we are not going to get anywhere. I actually had a situation where a woman came up to me so frustrated about the work that I was doing. She started yelling at me and her voice was up here. And when I responded, my voice was down here. And she kept yelling and my voice remained the same. And she felt maybe kind of silly. And so her voice came down a little bit. And before you knew it, we were on the same level having a lovely conversation. When you remain calm, when you listen, when you are understanding of somebody, when you are able to respond and say, I'm so sorry you're going through that, it brings them down those levels and you're able to have a really beautiful conversation. But if you don't listen, if you interject, it makes each and every situation more and more intense. You're not going to get anywhere at that. So if you're going to engage in a conversation on the issue of abortion, know that you're going to be listening 80% of the time and talking maybe 20% of the time, but to listen and pay attention to what the other person's saying. A lot of times they haven't been heard. A lot of times they're hurt. And just having somebody listen to them and love them can make all the difference. Tip number 2, we're not talking yet. We are now taking time to reflect. That's right. First, we're going to listen, and then we're going to take time to reflect before we respond. Taking time to reflect gives you an opportunity to pray, to kind of think on something, to figure out the best response to give to that particular person. The important thing to understand is that the topic of abortion is not fact, 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 fact. It is person by person. So to remember to take time to think and pray before you respond, giving yourself time to really think of the right answer for this particular person in this particular situation. Number 3 is to always be respectful. It is so easy to get angry on this topic. I mean, we're talking about something really tragic. It's easy to get frustrated with a person who thinks that killing an unborn child is okay. But you need to remember that you need to be respectful. I mean, think about the pro life message. It's valuing and dignifying all human life. So if we can't respect the person in front of us, so how can we expect them to be inspired to respect and dignify every person if you yourself aren't even doing it to them? It's important to know going into it that pro choicers, not all, but some, may use foul language in a conversation with you. That does not give you the go ahead, the permission to do it back. We're not treating others as they treat us. We're treating others like we would want to be treated. Number 4, and this is my favorite, it is to seek common ground. So often when we engage in conversations with somebody who's pro-choice, we feel like we are polar opposites. One is pro-choice and one is pro-life. And those opinions are polar opposite. But that doesn't mean that we as people are polar opposite. In fact, we normally have something in common. And if we could find that middle ground, it actually humanizes the other person to the other person even more. Actually, I had a time where there was a protester at one of our events and I wanted to go and talk to her about her belief. But before I jumped in talking about abortion, I first asked her where her outfit was from because it was super cute. And she mentioned that it was from TJ Maxx. And I was like, oh my goodness, I love TJ Maxx. And we had a whole conversation about TJ Maxx, and it was not only person to person, but girl to girl. And then we engaged in a really delightful conversation on the issue of abortion. But that commonality reminded each of us that we're just young girls trying our best to love people their very best. And I believe that it doesn't involve abortion, and she did. But we weren't so different. And seeking that common ground really helped that conversation. Number 5, and we are halfway there. Now, before I tell you tip number 5, I want to real quickly ask you a question. Has this video been interesting? Have my stories been good or keeping you interested in what I'm saying? I know that's kind of a vulnerable question to ask, and I might get really humbled. But I'm assuming if you're still watching, this video might be semi-interesting to you. And I think I might know why. Because throughout this entire video, I have related each point back to something personal that's happened in my life. And that's just it. When you make it personal, which is tip number 5, the message becomes a lot more convincing. If you were just simply spitting facts about abortion and the pro-life movement and what pro-lifers believe, people aren't going to buy that. They're not going to be inspired or convinced by that. But if you relate it back to your life and how these things have affected you in some capacity, it becomes a whole lot more inspiring, a whole lot more convincing, and that goes a long way. Tip number 6, give the benefit of the doubt and never take offense. This one is so hard. It's so hard because we might experience pro-choicers saying really cruel things to us. I mean, unimaginable things have been said to me. And it's hard to not take it personally because they're saying it to my face. But to remember that there's probably a lot of pain behind that. But to give grace and to give mercy in those circumstances. Number 7, and this is probably the hardest one for me, but it's to not interrupt other people's conversations. Let me be completely honest with you real quickly. I remember when I was 14 years old, I got to work the Face the Truth Tour. It's an event put on by the Pro-Life Action League. It's an event where we display large images of abortion victims at major intersections in Chicagoland and beyond. I was so excited to be doing this week-long bit of activism. We were in Aurora, Illinois, and I remember seeing this woman park her car, come over to us and start asking one of my cousins about our display and what we were doing. Then I saw another friend walk up to the cousin in this woman and start talking to her. And I noticed that they were debating. So I joined in. I am now the 3rd person to join in on this conversation. And the conversation did not end well. Here's why. It's not because I didn't have the facts. It's not because I didn't have the information. It's not because we weren't all being loving and compassionate. It's because it was 3 against 1. We had all ganged up on her. Even though that wasn't our intention, we had done it anyway. She felt like we had ganged up on her. and that turned her off from the conversation with us. If I had simply swallowed my pride and allowed for my cousin to just engage in this conversation and this other friend to take a step back as well, it might have gone completely differently. That was a situation I had to learn from. You may have all the right things to say, but trust in the Holy Spirit. He led them to that person for that reason. Tip number 8, pick your battles and keep it simple. Tell me, have you ever engaged in a conversation on an issue of abortion and it goes like this? What about girls who have been raped? What about the kids in foster care? What about the woman's health? What if the fetus has a disability? What if the parents can't financially support it? What if she's gonna get kicked out of her house? What if she's not ready? And so on and so forth. And you're just like, oh my goodness, where do I go from here? You need to pick your battles and keep it simple. You could respond and say, hey, I would love to answer each and every one of your questions, but unfortunately, we don't have time for that. So I'd like to ask you, what is your main concern with the pro-life message? What issue could I address for you right now? Pick your battles and keep it simple. Number 9 is to admit when you lack information. This does a couple things. Number 1, it shows that you're fair and reasonable. I also believe that it makes it more personal, less like you're just reciting facts from memory. It shows that you're continuously learning and studying this topic, which we all should be doing. And number 2, it leaves the door open for later conversations. When you say, hey, I'm not actually sure about that, let me get back to you, then you have left the door open for another conversation, which leads us into our final tip, tip number 10, which is that leaving the door open. When I engaged in that first conversation on the issue of abortion that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I walked away feeling slightly discouraged. I told my grandmother that I had a great conversation and there were a lot of really great points made on either side, but bummed because I had lost the debate. And she told me that you're not going to change somebody's mind on the spot. They want to change their mind in private. That's a hard thing to do. We're here to simply plant seeds, and some other person or some other situation may water that seed later on. But never feel discouraged after an opportunity to share the pro-life message, so long as you did. If it's a friend, family member, remember to always end the conversation, letting them know that you're here for any other further questions, that you really enjoyed the conversation, and that you hope to be talking again soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate your support. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, all of that. And remember, there is a donation link below if you want to continue to support the work that I do. And final reminder before I let you go, this Sharing the Pro-Life Message Handbook that I referenced throughout the entire video is available in the link below. With all that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.